Capitol Hill is gripped by unprecedented turmoil as the Senate publicly calls for former President Donald Trump's immediate resignation. What is usually a measured, ceremonial chamber has been transformed into a stage of high-stakes urgency, with lawmakers openly demanding accountability from a former president. The move is more than symbolic rhetoric. It represents a dramatic escalation in political pressure. Combining public condemnation with procedural leverage, statements from both parties make clear that this is no ordinary debate. It is a coordinated effort to compel a high-profile resignation. Security around the Capitol has been tightened in response to the rising tension. Live hearings, urgent press briefings, and ongoing investigations have created an atmosphere of palpable stress, with staff and legislators reportedly being escorted through secure corridors. Amid heightened vigilance, the stakes extend beyond the legislative floor. Every development is being closely monitored, and the unfolding events could shape political narratives nationwide. The Senate's unprecedented demand did not arise spontaneously. Multiple factors have converged to create intense legal, financial, and political pressure. Recent court rulings, active investigations, and public controversies have fueled growing concern among lawmakers about whether a former president can continue to exert influence without facing consequences. At the core of the Senate's action are legal entanglements and financial obligations. Unpaid judgments, ongoing probes, and alleged misconduct have blurred the lines between political calculation and legal necessity. By publicly calling for resignation, the Senate is sending a clear signal. Status and past office do not grant immunity from accountability. Political considerations are equally important. With midterm elections approaching and party dynamics under scrutiny, senators face pressure to act visibly. Silence could be interpreted as tolerating misconduct, while decisive action demonstrates leadership and responsiveness to constituents. The combination of legal leverage and political urgency has created a perfect storm, making the Senate's call far more than a symbolic gesture. It is a direct challenge to Trump's authority within both his party and the broader political landscape. Reactions across Capitol Hill reflect this tension. Lawmakers are divided. Some support the demand for resignation, while others urge caution, creating a charged and uncertain environment. Committee hearings have been temporarily disrupted, and urgent meetings are underway to manage the political and security ramifications. Outside the Capitol, demonstrations are anticipated, heightening concerns about potential unrest. Within this crucible of tension, every move is scrutinized, and the stakes extend well beyond the immediate political theater. As the Senate's unprecedented call reverberates through Capitol Hill, former President Donald Trump and his inner circle confront a critical moment of decision-making. Early statements from Trump's team suggest a dual approach, a combination of defiance, aimed at rallying his core supporters, and carefully calibrated messaging intended to counter the intensifying political pressure. His allies emphasize loyalty, portraying the Senate's demand as politically motivated or as part of a broader effort to weaken his influence. This framing seeks to transform a potential crisis into a demonstration of resilience, reinforcing Trump's authority among his base. Behind the scenes, legal advisors are meticulously evaluating the ramifications of compliance versus confrontation. Potential consequences are being assessed, including the risks associated with public retreat, selective concessions, or legal maneuvers that might mitigate escalating pressures. Each option carries weighty implications. Any misstep could magnify political fallout, erode public support, and embolden adversaries. The stakes are high, and decision-making is occurring under intense scrutiny from the media, the public, and political allies alike. The Senate's demand has also plunged Trump's supporters within the Republican Party into a state of crisis management. Party leaders, campaign strategists, and close advisors are grappling with the delicate balance between defending a former president and maintaining the party's broader credibility. Strategic deliberations are focused on whether to encourage Trump to reduce public visibility, manage interactions with the media more carefully, or double down on loyalty messaging. These internal debates highlight the tension between protecting institutional image and supporting a politically influential figure whose actions now carry heightened scrutiny. Financial and campaign considerations further complicate decision-making. Major donors and influential backers are reportedly monitoring developments closely, evaluating whether continued support aligns with their interests. Perceived instability could prompt withdrawal of funding or strategic distancing, compounding pressure on Trump and the convergence of political, legal, and financial forces has created a high-stakes environment where every statement, meeting, or strategic choice carries immediate and long-term consequences. The complexity of Trump's response underscores a broader political reality. The Senate's call for resignation is not merely symbolic, but a catalyst for rapid decision-making under intense public scrutiny. This standoff exemplifies the intersection of law, politics, and perception, forcing Trump and his team to weigh each action carefully. The balancing act involves projecting strength while managing vulnerabilities, ensuring that public messaging, legal strategy, and political calculations are tightly aligned. Ultimately, the unfolding scenario illustrates the high-stakes nature of modern political crises. The Senate's demand has created a multi-layered challenge for Trump. He must maintain loyalty among his base, navigate legal obligations, manage media narratives, and address potential financial ramifications. Each choice carries ripple effects across party dynamics, public perception, and institutional trust. The response strategy is therefore not only about immediate survival, but also about preserving long-term influence within the Republican Party and the broader political landscape. While the Senate's call for Donald Trump's resignation is dramatic and historically unusual, legal experts emphasize a crucial reality. The demand itself is not legally enforceable. The Senate does not possess the authority to compel a former president to resign from private life, withdraw from political activity, or step away from public influence. There is no constitutional mechanism that allows Congress to remove political standing or silence a private citizen, even one who previously held the highest office in the nation. In strict legal terms, the demand functions as a statement of condemnation, rather than an instrument of direct enforcement. However, to dismiss the Senate's action as merely symbolic would be a serious misreading of its power. Legal analysts note that public condemnation from a formal legislative body carries significant institutional weight. It signals a convergence of political will that can amplify pressure on parallel legal and regulatory processes. Ongoing investigations, civil litigation, and financial oversight efforts do not exist in a vacuum. When lawmakers publicly frame a figure as unfit for continued influence, it reshapes the broader environment in which judges, regulators, and investigators operate. While these actors are legally independent, they are not insulated from public context, political signals, or heightened scrutiny. Timing further amplifies the impact of the Senate's move. Coordinated statements from multiple senators, particularly when they cross party lines, suggest a deliberate strategy to maximize political and reputational pressure. This coordination transforms individual criticism into an institutional stance, making it harder for allies to dismiss the demand as isolated political theater. In practice, such a unified front can influence donor confidence, internal party calculations, and the willingness of political operatives to continue aligning themselves closely with Trump. The reputational cost of association rises as institutional condemnation becomes more visible and sustained. The symbolic power of the Senate's action also shapes public perception in ways that carry tangible consequences. Public opinion, once framed by a narrative of accountability, can influence everything from media coverage to fundraising dynamics. Donors and corporate backers are often risk-sensitive. They respond not only to legal outcomes but also to reputational risk. When institutional actors publicly signal concern, financial supporters may reassess their involvement, fearing association with controversy or instability. Over time, this financial caution can weaken political infrastructure, reducing the resources available for legal defense, campaigning, and media engagement. In this sense, symbolism becomes a form of indirect enforcement. The Senate cannot compel resignation, but it can help create conditions under which continued political engagement becomes more costly and less sustainable. Legal experts describe this as a convergence of pressure points: institutional condemnation, public scrutiny, financial risk, and ongoing legal processes reinforcing one another. Each element alone may be limited, but together they create a cumulative effect that can reshape political behavior. Ultimately, the Senate's call for resignation functions as a signal flare within the political and legal ecosystem. It alerts allies, donors, institutions, and the public that continued alignment carries heightened risk. While no statute enforces compliance, the surrounding environment becomes increasingly constraining. The power of the move lies not in legal compulsion, but in its ability to recalibrate incentives, reputations, and strategic calculations across the political landscape. The Senate's demand for Donald Trump's resignation has ignited an intense public and media storm, transforming a political dispute into a national spectacle. News outlets, cable panels, and digital platforms are dissecting every statement, press briefing, and social media post in a relentless 24-hour cycle of coverage. This saturation effect amplifies the sense of crisis, creating a political environment where urgency is not only reported but actively constructed through repetition, framing, and speculation. The pace of coverage leaves little room for nuance, pushing lawmakers and political operatives to react quickly rather than strategically. Public reaction has been sharply polarized. Supporters of Trump frame the Senate's move as an overreach of institutional power, arguing that lawmakers are attempting to undermine a political figure who continues to command significant popular support. To them, the call for resignation is evidence of entrenched political hostility rather than a neutral demand for accountability. Opponents, by contrast, view the Senate's action as long overdue, interpreting it as a necessary assertion of institutional standards and democratic norms. This divide has intensified online, where echo chambers reinforce existing beliefs and reward increasingly extreme interpretations of events. Social media plays a decisive role in accelerating this polarization. Clips from hearings, fragments of statements, and speculative commentaries circulate rapidly, often stripped of context. Algorithms reward emotionally charged content, pushing outrage, mockery, and conspiracy theories to the forefront of public attention. The result is a feedback loop. Viral narratives shape public sentiment, which in turn pressures political actors to adopt more performative positions. Lawmakers become conscious not only of policy outcomes, but of how each gesture will be interpreted, clipped, and circulated across digital platforms. Media narratives are also shaping behavior behind the scenes. Party leaders, donors, and influential figures are acutely aware that alignment or opposition will be publicly scrutinized. Silence can be interpreted as complicity, while outspoken support or condemnation carries reputational risks. As a result, political actors are calibrating their statements with extraordinary care, often prioritizing optics over substance. The perception of crisis becomes as consequential as any concrete legal development, influencing fundraising decisions, alliance building, and internal party strategy. The cumulative effect is a political environment governed by narrative pressure. Facts, legal processes, and institutional procedures remain important, but they now operate within a media ecosystem that rewards speed, emotion, and spectacle. This environment compresses decision-making timelines, forcing rapid responses to evolving headlines. In such conditions, misstatements or poorly timed gestures can escalate tensions, while carefully crafted messaging can temporarily stabilize support. Ultimately, the Senate's call for resignation has triggered not only institutional pressure, but a full-scale narrative battle over legitimacy, accountability, and power. The struggle is no longer confined to Capitol Hill. It unfolds across screens, platforms, and public discourse nationwide. In this arena, perception becomes a strategic resource, and the ability to control narrative momentum can shape political outcomes as powerfully as formal authority. The Senate's unprecedented demand for Donald Trump's resignation marks a defining moment in modern American politics, one that extends far beyond immediate headlines or short-term controversy. Although the call carries no direct legal authority over a former president, it represents a powerful convergence of political, legal, and reputational pressure that is likely to reshape Trump's influence, his party's internal dynamics, and broader expectations of political accountability for years to come. At its core, this moment signals a recalibration of political immunity. The public condemnation of a former president by a formal legislative body sends a message that political status does not permanently shield individuals from institutional scrutiny. Even without enforcement power, the Senate's stance reframes the boundaries of acceptable conduct and establishes a precedent for future confrontations involving powerful political figures outside of office. This symbolic shift matters because norms, once publicly challenged, are difficult to restore to their previous state. Within Trump's political orbit, the effects are likely to unfold gradually but persistently. Donors, campaign operatives, and strategic allies operate within risk-sensitive environments. As institutional pressure intensifies, financial backers may reassess their involvement, not solely based on legal outcomes, but on reputational exposure and long-term stability. Advisors and party operatives may distance themselves to protect their own credibility, reducing the organizational capacity that sustains political influence. Even if Trump maintains strong grassroots support, erosion at the elite and institutional level can weaken his ability to convert popularity into durable political power. The Republican Party itself faces a long-term inflection point. The Senate's public condemnation creates space for intra-party accountability, signaling that loyalty to a central figure is no longer cost-free. Future party leaders, committees, and campaign organizations may feel emboldened to moderate or challenge Trump's influence, recalculating endorsements, funding strategies, and messaging priorities. Over time, this can redistribute power within the party, shifting authority from personality-driven leadership toward more institutional control. Such shifts rarely occur overnight, but they reshape internal incentives and alter the trajectory of party identity. Legally, the Senate's move also exerts indirect influence. While no enforcement mechanism exists, the heightened visibility surrounding ongoing investigations, civil suits, and financial oversight intensifies pressure on legal actors to pursue timely and decisive action. The public framing of accountability can reinforce institutional momentum, making delays or inaction more politically costly. In this environment, legal outcomes become entangled with public expectations, increasing the likelihood that disputes will be resolved under intense scrutiny, rather than quietly deferred. Beyond partisan dynamics, the broader political ecosystem is affected. The spectacle of Capitol Hill mobilizing institutional condemnation against a former president reshapes public expectations of democratic accountability. Citizens witness a system attempting to assert moral and procedural authority beyond electoral cycles. Even critics of the Senate's move must contend with the precedent it establishes. Political influence is increasingly conditional, shaped by institutional pressure, reputational risk, and sustained public scrutiny. This recalibration alters how power is exercised, contested, and constrained in the post-presidency phase of political life. Ultimately, this episode underscores a deeper transformation in how authority functions in modern politics. Enforcement no longer relies solely on legal compulsion. Symbolic actions, narrative pressure, financial caution, and institutional signaling now operate together to shape outcomes. Trump's political future, therefore, is no longer determined only by elections or the loyalty of his base. It is shaped by a broader web of institutional and public pressures that will influence alliances, strategy, and credibility over time. In this sense, the Senate's demand does not remove Trump from the political arena, but it changes the rules by which power is negotiated within it. Influence becomes conditional, authority becomes contested, and status alone no longer guarantees insulation from scrutiny. The long-term consequences of this shift will unfold gradually, but the signal has already been sent. In an era of heightened accountability, no political figure, regardless of prominence, operates beyond the reach of institutional and public judgment.